Continuing with Chapter 16 of The Sword and the Stone, the wart has been turned into a badger. Merlin has told him this is the last time that he's going to be turned into an animal, and he decided that he didn't want to talk to another badger, that he was going to kind of stump off in a huff. He's probably about 16 years old now, and he decided to try and eat a hedgehog, but the hedgehog turned out to have used to have been Merlin's pet hedgehog, and Wart feels terrible about it, and he is trying to get the hedgehog to calm down after threatening to eat him. "You needn't uncurl," said the wart resignedly. "I am sorry I woke you up, chap, and I'm sorry I frightened you. I think you are a charming hedgehog, and meeting you has made me feel more cheerful again. You just go to sleep like you were when I met you, and I shall go off and look for my friend Badger, as I was told to do. Good night, urchin, and good luck in the snow." "Good night it may be," muttered the pig grumpily, "and then again it mayn't. First it's uncurl, then it's curl, one thing one moment, and another thing to next. Hey-ho, 'tis a turvy world. Good night, ladies, is my motto. Come hail, come snow, and so us shall be continued in our next." With these words, the humble animal curled itself up more snugly than before, gave several squeaky grunts, and was far away in a dream world so much deeper than our human dreams as a whole winter's sleep is longer than the mercy of a single night. Well, thought the wart, he certainly gets over his troubles pretty quickly. Fancy going to sleep again as quick as that, and I dare say he was never more than half awake all the time, and will think it was only a dream when he gets up properly in the spring. He watched the dirty little ball of leaves and grass and fleas for a moment, curled up tightly inside the hole, then grunted and moved off toward the badger's set, following his own oblong footmarks backwards in the snow. "So Merlin sent you to me," said the badger, "to finish off your education. Well, I can only teach you two things, to dig and to love your home. These are the truths of the philosophy. These are the true end of philosophy." "Would you show me your home?" "Certainly," said the badger, "though of course I don't use it all. It's a rambling old place, much too big for a single man. I suppose some parts of it may be 1,000 years old. There are about 4 families of us in it, here and there. Take it by and large, from cellar to attics, and sometimes we don't meet for months. A crazy old place, I suppose it must seem to you modern people, but there, it's cozy." He went ambling off down the corridors, rolling from leg to leg, with that queer badger paddle, his white mask with its black stripes looking ghostly in the gloom. "It's along that passage," he said, "if you want to wash your hands." Badgers are not like foxes. They have a special midden where they put their used bones and rubbish, proper earth closets, and bedrooms, whose bedding they turn out frequently to keep it clean. The wart was enchanted with all he saw. He admired the great hall most, for this was the central room of the whole fortification. It was difficult to know whether to think of it as a fortification or as a palace, and all the various suits and boat holes radiated outward from it. It was a bit cobwebby, owing to being a sort of common room instead of being looked after by one particular family, but it was decidedly solemn. Badger called it the combination room. All round the paneled walls there were ancient paintings of departed badgers, famous in their day for scholarship or godliness, lit up from above by shaded glowworms. There were stately chairs, with the badger arms stamped in gold upon their Spanish leather seats. The leather was coming off, and a portrait of the founder over the fireplace. The chairs were arranged in a semicircle round the fire, and there were mahogany fans with which everybody could shield their faces from the flames, and a kind of tilting board by means of which the decanters could slip back from the bottom of the semicircle to the top. Some black gowns hung in the passage outside, and all was extremely ancient. "I'm a bachelor at the moment," said the badger apologetically, when they got back to his own snug room with the flowered wallpaper, "and I'm afraid there is only one chair, which you will have to sit on the bed. Make yourself at home, my dear, while I brew some punch, and tell me how things are going in the wide world." "Oh, they go on much the same. Merlin is very well, and Kay is to be made a knight next week." "An interesting ceremony," commented the badger, stirring the spirits with a big spoon. "What enormous arms you have got," remarked the wart, watching him. So have I, for that matter. He looked down at his own bandy-legged muscles. He was really just a tight chest holding together a pair of forearms, mighty as thighs. It's to dig with, said the Badger complacently. Mole, and I suppose you would have to dig pretty quick to match with us. It's to dig with, said the Badger complacently. Mole and I suppose you would have to dig pretty quick to match with us. I met a hedgehog outside, said the Wart. Did you now? They say nowadays hedgehogs can carry swine fever and foot and mouth disease. I thought he was rather nice. They do have a sort of pathetic appeal, said the Badger sadly, but I'm afraid I generally just munch them up. There is something irresistible about pork cracklings. The Egyptians, he added by this, and by this he meant the gypsies, are fond of them for eating too. Mine wouldn't uncurl. You should have pushed him into some water, said the Badger, and then he'd have shown you his poor legs quick enough. Come, punch is ready. Sit down by the fire and take your ease. It's nice to sit here with the snow and wind outside. It is nice. Let us drink good luck to Kay and his knighthood. Good luck to Kay, then. Good luck. Well, said the Badger, setting down his glass again with a sigh, now what could have possessed Merlin to send you to me? He was talking about learning, said the Wart. Ah, well, if it's learning you are after, you have come to the right shop. But don't you find learning rather dull? Sometimes I do, said the Wart, and sometimes I don't. On the whole, I can bear a good deal of learning if it's about natural history. I am writing a treatise just now, said the Badger, coughing diffidently to show that he was absolutely set upon explaining it, which is to point out why man has become the master of all the animals. Perhaps you would like to hear that. It's for my dealet, you know, added the Badger hastily before the Wart could protest. He got so few chances of reading his treatise to anybody that he could not bear to let his priceless opportunity slip by. Thank you very much, said the Wart. It will be good for you, you know, exclaimed the Badger in a humble voice. It's just the thing to top off your education. Study birds and fish and animals, then finish off with man. How fortunate you came. Now where the devil did I put that manuscript? The old gentleman hurriedly scratched about with his great claws until he had turned up a dirty old bundle of papers, one corner of which had been used for lighting something. Then he sat down in his leather armchair, which had a deep depression in the middle of it, put on his velvet smoking cap with the tassel, and produced a pair of tarantula spectacles, which he balanced at the end of his nose. Hem, said the Badger. He immediately became completely paralyzed with shyness and sat blushing at his papers, unable to begin. Go on, said the Wart. It's not very good, explained the Badger coyly. It's just a rough draft, you know. I shall alter a lot before I send it in. I'm sure it must be interesting, said the Wart. Oh, no, it isn't a bit interesting. It's just an odd thing I throw off in the odd half hour just to pass the time, you know. But still, this is how it begins. Ahem, said the Badger. He put on an impossibly high falsetto voice and began to read as fast as possible. People often ask an idle question whether the process of evolution began with the chicken or the egg. Was there an egg out of which the first chicken came, or did a chicken lay the first egg? I am in a position to state that the first thing that was created was the egg. When God manufactured the eggs, out of which the fishes and the serpents and the birds and the mammals and even the duck-billed platypus would eventually emerge, he called the embryos before him and saw that they were good. Perhaps I ought to explain, added the Badger, lowering his papers nervously and looking at the Wart over the top of them, that all embryos look very much the same. They are what you are before you were born, and whether you are going to be a tadpole or a peacock or a camelopard or a man, when you are an embryo, you look just like a particularly repulsive and helpless human being. I continue as follows. The embryos stood up in front of God, with their feeble hands clasped politely over their stomachs, and their heavy heads hanging down respectively, and God addressed them. He said, Now, you embryos, here you are, all looking exactly the same. We are going to give you the choice of what you are going to be. When you grow up, you will get bigger anyway, but we are pleased to grant you another gift as well. You may alter any parts of yourself into anything which you think would be useful to you in afterlife. For instance, at the moment you can't dig. Anybody who would like to turn his hands into a pair of spades or garden forks is allowed to do so. Or, to put it another way, at present you can only use your mouths for eating with. Anybody who would like to use his mouth as an offensive weapon can change it by asking, and be a cock-and-drill or a saber-toothed tiger. Now then, step up and choose your tools, but remember that what you choose you will grow into and will have to stick to. All the embryos thought the matter over politely, and then, one by one, they stepped up before the eternal throne. They were allowed 2 or 3 specializations, so that some chose to use their arms as flying machines, or their mouths as weapons, or crackers, or drillers, or spoons, while others selected to use their bodies as boats and their hands as oars. We badgers thought very hard and decided to ask 3 boons. We wanted to change our skins for shields, our mouths for weapons, our arms for garden forks. These boons were granted to us. Everybody specialized in one way or another, and some of us in very queer ones. For instance, one of the lizards decided to swap his whole body for blotting paper, and one of the toads who lived in the anthropods decided to simply be a water bottle. The asking and granting took up 2 long days. They were the 5th and 6th, so far as I remember, and at the very end of the 6th day, just before it was time to knock off for Sunday, they had got through all the little embryos except one. This embryo was man. "Well, our little man," said God, "you have waited till the last, and slept on your decision. And we are sure you have been thinking hard all this time. What can we do for you?" "Please, God," said the embryo, "I think that you made me in the shape which I now have for reasons best known to yourselves, and that it would be rude to change. If I am to have any choice, I will stay just as I am. I will not alter any of the parts which you gave me, for other and doubtless inferior tools. I will stay a defenseless embryo all my life, doing my best to make unto myself a few feeble implements out of the wood, iron, and other materials which you have seen fit to put before me. If I want a boat, I will endeavor to construct it out of trees. If I want to fly, I will put together a chariot to do it for me. Perhaps I have been very silly in refusing to take advantage of your kind offer, but I have done my best to think it over carefully, and now hope that the feeble decision of this small innocent will find favor with yourselves." "Well done!" exclaimed the Creator in delighted tones. "Here, all you embryos, come here with your beaks and whatnots to look upon our first man. He is the only one who has guessed our riddle out of all of you. We have great pleasure in conferring upon him the order of dominion over the fowls of the air, the beasts of the earth, and the fishes of the sea. Now let the rest of you get along and love and multiply, for it is time to knock off for the weekend. As for you, man, you will be a naked tool all your life. Though a user of tools, you will look like an embryo till they bury you, but all others will be embryos before your might. Eternally undeveloped, you will always remain potential in our image, able to see some of our sorrows and feel some of our joys. We are partly sorry for you, man, and partly happy, but always proud. Run along, then, man, and do your best. And listen, man, before you go." "Well," said Adam, turning back from his dismissal. "We were only going to say," said God shyly, twisting their hands together, "we were only just going to say, God bless you." And that is the end of chapter 21.